Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Captain Mikey. And here we are with episode 6 of 1912 Titanic Mystery. And this is to be the last episode, I promise. I don't care how long this video's got to be, but this is going to be my last episode on this game. So, before we get into it, as always, I'll put a link in the description of this game below so you guys can play it if you want. But alright, let's go. So I guess we're going back to the first class galley. Food that was prepared in the galley had to be stored in Titanic's refrigeration units. There were a number of different rooms to accommodate meats, cheese, fish, game, poultry, wines, spirits, and champagne, all of which had to be maintained at a separate temperatures, ideally suited to each type of item. Okay. Winnie and her steward friend helped to carry William to the ship's hospital, where the kindly doctor treated him for a sprain. We spent much of the afternoon there, with his ankle wrapped in ice to reduce the swelling. Winnie was so kind, staying with us for several hours. Eventually, I asked her to go to our cabin to inform Mrs. Hutchins of our whereabouts. Least she became concerned and ordered a search. To my surprise, Edward visited us about 20 minutes after Winnie had departed. Alright. On the night the ship sank, the second-class passengers could choose from a menu of baked haddock with sharp sauce, curried chicken, spring lamb, or roast turkey. At least their stomachs were happy when they went down. Really? I don't know about that. Okay. He explained that he had arrived at our cabin just as Mrs. Hutchins was receiving the news of William's injury from Winnie, and immediately set about to offer his support. William perked up at Edward's arrival. It was so wonderful to see the two of them interacting in such a fashion. William smiled brightly when Edward presented him with a stuffed bear from the ship's gift shop. Now, just so that you guys are aware, the gift shop was also in the barber shop, located on C deck, just right by the aft grand staircase. The doctor shortly thereafter pronounced that the swelling in William's ankle had relented enough for him to be discharged. Edward insisted that we first visit the a la carte restaurant, where he treated our son to his first dish of French ice cream. Now, I don't know how it was back in 1912, but nowadays, in an emergency, if you're on a ship, the best thing you should always have is some type of trip insurance. Because if you don't have the insurance and you fall or you have to be medically evac'd, you could end up having to pay out of pocket like $200,000. It's like really, really expensive. I hear about it all the time. I listen to cruise radio all the time, so yeah. Again, I don't know how that was in 1912, but today, whew, you better have that insurance. The bar in the smoking room opened at 8 a.m. and closed at 11:30 p.m. Even back then, the White Star Line appealed to patrons to observe moderation though I doubt many observed this rule on the night of the sinking. Really? Afterwards, we returned to our cabin and William settled in for a much-needed nap. Mrs. Hutchins, nursing a headache from the previous evening's revelry, slept nearby. Edward motioned for me to join him in the passageway, where he asked in quite quiet tones if I had considered his offer from last night. I responded that due to William's injury, I had not yet had time to think things through, but the concerned look on Edward's face told me that I really wanted to know he truly loves me, and I have never stopped loving him. Throwing caution to the winds, I agreed that William and I will accompany him when the Titanic docks in New York City. But I have a feeling that he will not survive. On the night of April 14th, the passengers eating in the first-class dining room had a choice of 4 desserts, including the Waldorf pudding, peaches in chartreuse, I don't know what that says, jelly, chocolate, and vanilla eclairs, or French ice cream. Hard to resist not trying them all, I would think. Waldorf pudding. Is that just a play off of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel? Edward smiled and said that all that was needed now was to break the news to Cassandra, which he promises he will do after this evening's meal. I pleaded for him to keep her dignity in mind after he left. I walked out to the deck for some air and to write these words. When I started this voyage, I was filled with uncertain excitement for William and myself. I'm even more thrilled now knowing that my beloved and I will be reunited and my son will have his father in his life. Are you sure you're feeling all right? You look a bit pale. Maybe it's just the light in here. Oh, I almost forgot. This was lying on the counter in the galley. I figured you misplaced it. You've visited all these dining areas and yet you seem to have lost your appetite. If only you knew where that bomb was. I suggest you check back in a few places you visited prior. Oh boy. It just keeps going. Back to the a la carte restaurant. Woohoo! You know, there's a lot more places that they could have used instead of the continuous same old areas. You probably are aware that only 1/10 of an iceberg mass actually floats above the waterline. This makes it deceptively more massive than it appears. Even a ship as large and as fast as Titanic would have made little impression on an iceberg. Yes, that's a true fact. Tonight at dinner, I received a handwritten note. It was from Edward, requesting that I meet him at the Turkish baths on E-Deck. I admit it seems a strange place to rendezvous, but I imagine that he is trying to avoid our being seen by Cassandra. All the passengers in steerage were inspected by the hospital staff on Titanic. They were checked for lice and any sign of infectious diseases, like tuberculosis. Little did they know that lice were the least of their worries. I so look forward to dropping this pretense. No longer will I deny my heart or worry about what those of the upper class might think. Edward and I are fated to be together, as our surprise meeting on this voyage has shown me. Alright, so now we're going back to the engine room. Titanic's great boilers required a lot of heat, which was provided by Irish laborers working in the furnace rooms in the ship's lowest levels. On a single day, they shoveled over 800 tons of coal. Yes, that would be the stokers and the firemen to feed the boilers. And then you had the engine room crew. Mrs. Hutchins seemed in much better spirits after dinner. I shared with her Edward's note. She urged me to listen to my heart. After spending some time on deck getting some much-needed air, she has returned in time to watch William while I meet with my beloved. I sang his favorite lullaby over in Killarney, and by the last Raleigh, he was fast asleep. I am glad to see him so at peace after the disastrous day he has had. But he seems to have endured his injury with great resilience. If only all our hurts were so easily overcome. As I write these words, waiting for the appointed hour of my rendezvous with Edward, I find myself so thankful for this ship of dreams, for it has allowed me to find my own dream. As a precaution, I am ordering the ship's speed down to 6 knots. Can't be too careful in these waters. Oh, and I discovered this on a gantry in the engine room. You must have dropped it. Really? So you're not even going to question her as to why she was down in the engine room. And you're the captain. Even on today's ships, you wouldn't be able to do that. So you see that the past reveals a love that ascends the restrictions of social class. But is it truly love or just a fantasy on the part of a social climbing gold digger? Jeez. Only time will tell. By the way, has it occurred to you that I might be your friendly bartender, Isaac Maryland? As one of the hired staff, he would have access all around the ship, and you have to wonder if that happy-go-lucky demeanor is a cover for something. Regardless, if you wish this ship to see the light of another day, then I suggest you resume your search. Yeah, I could tell you she's not a gold digger. Jesus. Oh, would you look at that? Now we got some new areas, finally. Explorers found one of the purser's safes in 1987, but it only had a few coins. Some people suggest that another safe full of priceless jewels is still to be found. Yeah, no, I don't think that's true in 1987. No. I don't think so. I mean, maybe it was Robert Ballard that found the safe while exploring the wreck. But first off, they definitely did not open it and find a few coins in it. All right. It seems like that's just kind of a play off of 97's Cameron Titanic. Kind of. Like they only found a few things in there. Gotta find birds. Alright, be back. So apparently while finding all these objects, I ended up clicking on all these. Match all the hidden pairs. You may only flip over 2 tiles at a time. Oh yeah, I remember this game. Okay. How interesting is it to read the mad thoughts of this foolish woman? She was truly misguided to think that she could derail the plans that I have for Edward and myself. Eleanor should not have pushed so far. I might have allowed Edward to maintain his dalliance with her if it kept him happy. But I've no doubt that once I became pregnant with his legitimate child, his attention would have returned to me. Regardless, that distraction has now been taken care of. My plan to lure the Irish wench to the Turkish baths worked flawlessly. It was a simple matter to compose a note that mimicked Edward's handwriting, though I must admit that adopting such a personal tone sickened me. He has never called me beloved. However, with her out of the way, he will come to think of me with such fondness. When Edward announces his misguided intention to reunite with his whore, I knew that I had to act quickly and decisively. If he expected me to simply accept his decision, he was sorely mistaken. Ooh. So how did this get in the diary? Obviously, this is the Edward's wife, like the nasty woman. And not our main character, obviously. Alright, to the post office. Did you know that over 3,000 bags of mail went down with the ship? I wonder what secrets those lost letters might hold. All right. Since I found most of the pieces already, There we go. Find the mystery word by rearranging the letters. You can swap the letters by clicking on them. I'm going to skip this one. Okay. There is far too much writing on our impending marriage for me to allow him otherwise. Thankfully, at dinner, I was able to persuade dear Mr. Guggenheim to engage him in conversation in the smoking room. With Edward distracted, I was free to execute my plan. A few well-placed bribes to friendly stewards ensured not only that the note was delivered to pitiable Eleanor, but that the Turkish baths would be available for us for use long after they were closed for the evening, thus ensuring that the wench arrived starry-eyed with the intent of joining Edward in illict tourist. The surprised look on her face when she realized that she had been duped and that I was responsible for maneuvering her into this meeting was beyond price. I so desired to gloat at how easily she had been manipulated, but I could not indulge myself, for my deception was not yet finished. I still had to gain her trust in order to deliver my final blow. Before she could turn to exit, I pleaded with her, "Ellie, wait. I only wish to converse with you. I was wrong before to treat you so badly." Yeah, right. Like I said in the previous episode, I'm willing to bet that it was her future ancestors would do the bomb thing. All right. Crow's Nest. Ironic, isn't it? The lookouts in the crow's nest did not have binoculars. You think that they would have thought to bring a pair up with them. The night Titanic struck the iceberg, there was no moon, and the sea was very still. Had the water been less calm, there would have been breakers around the base of the iceberg, which would have made it easier for the spotters in the crow's nest to see from afar. Yes, that part is very true. However, the binoculars, no. That would not do anything. You see, you can't just spot an iceberg with binoculars. Alright, if you don't know what's there, even if you were looking straight ahead, here's the thing. There was a cold water mirage that night. So, it wouldn't have made any sense to use the binoculars. Binoculars are really more used for once you've spotted something, you use it to take a closer look so you can see it better. But other than that, that's all it's good for. And even if you were to have a pair of binoculars constantly up to your face, it just would have been no good, because the rest of your eyesight would have been blinded, and you still probably would have missed the iceberg. Alright, find 10 differences between these two nearly identical pictures. Alright, back to this again, huh? This is easy. Kind of. It's like everything's all up the front area. She hesitated, uncertain, and I continued. I know Edward will be happy with you. Perhaps if you can tell me more about your previous relationship with him, it will assist me in working through my own disappointment. The poor girl was so deluded in her feelings that she easily fell for my feigned interest. As she explained her pitiful story, I did my best to express sympathy toward her plight. With each passing moment, I could feel her lowering her guard. Finally, she broke down in tears, which allowed me the opportunity I had been looking for. After calming her down, I opened up a bottle of wine and poured 2 glasses for us. I took a long drink from mine and urged her to do the same. She drank greedily from her glass, afterwards wiping the tears from her straight face. She complained about the wine's bitterness. I agreed that the Merlot was unfortunate vintage. Of course, what she did not realize was that I had dissolved a large dose of styrosine in her drink. I had obtained the poison earlier in the evening from one of the stewards. There is a fair supply on board which the crew uses to keep the rat population in check. Oh, crap. And it was a simple matter to lace her glass with it. The poor girl continued to drone on for several more minutes before the effects of the poison began to manifest. Eventually, dizziness overwhelmed her. Yeah. Oh, man, this is bad. This is so bad. This was left for you in the mailroom. As usual, nothing to reveal who it's from. History is playing out, and as you see, this diary now has a new author. More is to be revealed, but you'll need to return to some previous destinations to find additional diary entries. Holy moly. I see you finally came to your senses. Here's your drink. It's on the house. You look like you could use it pretty bad. You know Titanic had nothing like a cocktail bar or pub, but you could order spirits in most of the first-class public rooms. Edward will be privy to what has taken place. So she's literally trying to murder her. There were large panels of blue and green tiles that lined the walls of the Turkish baths, which were discovered to be relatively intact when explored by submersibles in 2005. They even found the frames of a few lounging chairs. Obviously, he's referring to Cameron's Last Mysteries of the Titanic when they explored the Turkish bath. At least they got the year of the documentary right. I urged her to lie down on one of the lounges. She began to twitch and convulse as the toxin spread throughout her body. Soon she was rigid and immobile, though still conscious, and it was at that moment that she must have realized that she had been deceived, for her eyes fearfully stared at me in desperation. I warned you once, and you chose to ignore me, I said, delivering my final pronouncement to her. Edward is mine, and a lower class strumpet like you is delusional to think otherwise. She had arrived, carrying a personal bag. A quick search through it revealed this diary. How convenient it was, for it offered me a large sample of her handwriting. to study. My final act was to divert attention from me by forging a note of suicidal despair to explain why she had taken the poison. I tore the note from the diary and placed it in her hand. She tried to speak, but all that came out were gargled sounds. With that, I carefully removed my own wine glass and bid her farewell. I also brought along this fanciful collection of entries, which I will now make my own. In the morning, the crew will discover Eleanor O'Sullivan's body, the victim of suicide. Her depression over not being able to support her young son will certainly make her death tragic, even more so when it is discovered that young William has been suffocated in his sleep. What the hell? Apparently by his despondent mother. As soon as this ship quiets down for the evening, I will slip into third class and take care of that final detail. Oh my God! She's like a murderer. She's like a serial killer. Postscript. Moments ago, a harsh scraping sound reverberated through the ship, shuddering along its entire length, and now the engines have suddenly ceased their steady rhythm. I must go to investigate, perhaps. Edward will be privy to what has taken place. Entry number 10, Monday, April 15th. It is a great irony that all of my manipulations were not as fate obviously had other intentions. Today I chronicle the events of the past evening aboard the Carpathia, having been rescued after a long night at sea aboard a lifeboat. Even now it all seems unbelievable that I watched the mighty, unsinkable Titanic descend to a watery grave on her maiden voyage. Edward met me as I was making my way to the first-class lounge to find out why the ship had stopped dead in the water. He explained that the unthinkable had happened. Titanic had struck an iceberg and was fast taking on water. Crew members had begun their evacuation drills, and the lifeboats on the upper deck were being readied for use. My plan to eliminate the Irish whore's whelp was thrown into disarray when Edward insisted on escorting me to the top deck where a substantial line of passengers was queuing up. Edward instructed me to board the next available lifeboat. Holy crap. In keeping with the modesty customs of the time, the swimming pool was reserved for women only from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and for men only from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. I admit I was becoming frightened, but when I asked for comfort, he refused. He related that he was intent on rescuing his paramour and her bastard child. Despite my protests, he quickly disappeared into the confusion throng of passengers as I waited for my turn to board a lifeboat. I overheard a wealthy couple speaking about the jewelry that they had stored inside the purser's safe. The husband assured his wife that he would retrieve the gems and return to give them to her. I realized that I must do the same, and I hurriedly made my way to the purser's office on C deck, where another long line of similarly concerned passengers had formed. I waited in vain for probably 15 minutes, but eventually came to realize that the purser has abandoned his post. All right. I believe you left this while you were in the steam bath. The steam must have unsealed the envelope, but I assure you I did not look at it. And so, as the diary's new author reveals, Titanic's tragic collision with the iceberg has happened and Cassandra's betrayal is revealed. How will it all play out as the great ship begins her inevitable journey to the bottom of the Atlantic? There are only a few entries left, but to retrieve them, you'll need to revisit some of your earlier localese. Did you know that Titanic was never christened? The White Star Line didn't participate in such practices. Perhaps a little champagne on ice against the hull before she sailed might have offered to her better luck. Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, yeah, I read that. Reluctantly, I returned to the open decks. Several of the lifeboats had already been launched by this time, and I became aware that I could no longer afford the luxury of giving up my place in line again. It was during this second wait that Edward caught up with me. He was carrying the bastard in his arms. The boy was inconsolable with tears. "Where is she?" Edward screamed at me with a rage I had heretofore never seen in him. I feigned ignorance. "She, you mean your whore? Howsoever would I know?" With one hand still cradling the boy, Edward seized me by my life vest. There was such fury in his eyes. They burned with hatred. I spoke with Mrs. Hutchins when I gathered up William. She told me that Ellie had received a note supposedly from me and had gone off to rendezvous. This what has your sinister Mechian written upon it, Cassandra. Ooh, he's pissed. Rightfully so. I guess that phrase about the mail must get through was on the minds of Titanic's 5 postal workers. They attempted to save 200 bags of registered mail, even as the mailroom was filling with seawater. This effort, no doubt, cost them their lives. That is some dedication. No, as we know now that they weren't drowned in the mailroom. All right, they were seen later on during the sinking. They still all lost their lives, but they were seen running around the ship. He raised his hand to strike me, but before he could, a male passenger attempted to stop him. Edward violently knocked him across the deck with a swift right cross. I gasped in fear, for I had never known that he was capable of such savage behavior. He turned to me again. "I will ask you one more time, Cassandra," he warned me, "and if you will not tell me, then I swear by all that is holy, I will throw you overboard and leave you to the icy waters." I shrunk back in fear. "Very well, then, I will tell you, though the knowledge will avail you none. Your whore is at the Turkish baths." We spoke briefly, but she was in a state of depression. Who knows what she may have done to herself? He stared at me for a moment, and I think he may have deduced that I was hinting at. But instead of striking me, all the rage seemed to drain from him, replaced by a resigned melancholy. Holy, "I must go to her," he said. With that, he turned to a young woman in the crowd and cried, "Who will save this boy?" She reached out her arms and handed crying William to her. The young woman was immediately seated aboard one of the collapsible lifeboats, and it was lowered away. Edward turned to me a final time and said, "Lord have mercy on your dark soul, Cassandra." Then he pivoted and vanished among the panicked crowd. I never saw him again. First Officer Murdoch ordered the engines reversed when he saw the iceberg, but that in effect is what doomed the ship. Titanic actually turned more quickly with greater forward momentum, so she most likely would have missed the iceberg had she just turned without trying to reverse her engines. So this game was still kind of made at a time when the whole reverse the engine thing was kind of in the mix. She never reversed her engines. They stopped the engines. The whole reversing of the engines, I believe, came from just 4th Officer Boxhall or something. I think he thought that's what happened. I eventually made it into a lifeboat, number 4, joined by John Jacob Astor's young wife. We watched in stunned silence when less than half an hour later, the mighty Titanic broke apart and slipped silently beneath the waves. The night air was filled with the wails of women and children crying for their lost husbands and fathers, while off in the distance I could hear the desperate cries of the unfortunate ones who survived the sinking and now floated helplessly in the frigid waters. We pleaded with our crewman to return, but he held back, fearful that the panicked survivors would swamp our boat. Eventually, the cries in the night fell silent, and we huddled together to await rescue. When the morning sun finally dawned, we were greeted by the arrival of the Carpathia, which had been steaming to our location throughout the long night. The Carpathia's crew has been doing their best to accommodate us, but the news is grim. Barely 700 passengers made it onto the limited number of lifeboats. This ticket just arrived for you, but I can't imagine why the steam baths would be open at this time of night. So now you know the whole story. You are ascended from the ill-fated lovers Edward Ashton Jones and Eleanor O'Sullivan, but that you still do not know is who I am. As it was 100 years ago, the key to everything can be found in the Turkish baths. So I guess this must be the end. Alright. I guess this is the last one. Rearrange the puzzle pieces in their proper order to reveal the message. I can only assume that Edward, who is among the missing, preferred to join his paramour in death. Perhaps she was even still alive when he found her immobile in the baths. I picture them in their final moments embraced tearfully as if filled with seawater. I have since learned that William was taken in by a young woman named Edwina Trout, and that he has become a favorite of the crew. I no longer feel compelled to end his life. A childhood spent forgotten in an orphanage should be punishment enough. As for me, all is lost. The fortune that would have been mine is gone with Edward. I suspect that our great and merciful Lord allowed me to survive as punishment, for I alone must live with the guilt of the tragedy I caused. When we arrive in New York, I will seek out a life of entombment. This diary will serve as a reminder of my wickedness. Very good. You discovered the location of the explosives. And now I am revealed as your nemesis. Are you surprised? And have you deduced the other secret, cousin? Yes, that's right. You and I are cousins, descended from the bloodline of Edward Ashton Jones. You see, 8 months after the Titanic's sinking, Cassandra Stone gave birth to an out-of-wedlock son, Trenton. That man was my grandfather, and you, as you know from your presence here on Titanic 2, are descended from William O'Sullivan. Edward was the father of both Trenton and William, for what little good it did them. Cassandra tried to establish that Edward was the father and lay claim to his legacy, but to no avail, and William's connection to his father's was never established by the orphanage he was raised in, so Edward's fortune had been kept in trust for 100 years. Had I not recently discovered the diary of Ellie O'Sullivan among my long since deceased great-grandmother's personal effects, that trust might have continued to remain unclaimed. But now, with the information in the diary clearly establishing Edward's relationship with Cassandra as well as Ellie, we'll be able to verify our relationship to him and collect the inheritance. Of course, there's one small problem for you. I have no desire to share the fortune. Therefore, you must be eliminated. And that will happen when you fail to defuse this bomb. Oh, crap. Oh, that's it? I'm impressed you managed to neutralize the explosives. After all, your puzzle skills are quite remarkable. It seems a pity to have to resort to a simple gunshot to do away with you, but you've left me with no other option. Hands up, Andrew! Your game is over! No, I was so close to the fortune! If I can't have it, neither will you! Welcome back to the land of the living. Fortunately for Mr. Nesmith shot Andrew and his arm, and that bullet only grazed your head. Not to worry, though. I've bandaged it up, and in a few weeks you'll be good as new. On behalf of the passengers and crew, I'd like to extend our thanks to you for saving the ship, and I have been authorized by the cruise line to offer you unlimited sailings aboard any of our ocean liners. Congratulations. Oh, God. Well, looks like there was a story here after all. You're a hero, and I'm going to make sure that the world knows about it. Sorry that I couldn't reveal to you earlier that I am an agent for Interpol, but that would have blown my cover. I've been tracking the mysterious bomber for some time. Unfortunately, I had been unable to determine it was Andrew Stone until he revealed his intentions to kill you. But he's no longer a threat now. As Andrew stated, the diary of Ellie O'Sullivan establishes your relationship with Edward Ashton Jones, and with Andrew certain to be serving jail time for the rest of his life, you are the sole inheritor of Edward's trust fund. Yay, I'm rich. My, this is quite a cause for celebration. It's not every day someone saves a famous cruise ship from sabotage and learns that they are an heir to a fortune. I say it's time for rum drinks all around on the house. The end. Okay, everybody. Thanks for watching. That is the end of 1912 Titanic Mystery. Well, that was quite an adventure, I'd say. And a crazy one at that. But, okay, everybody. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I hope you guys liked this series. I certainly enjoyed playing it. But, yeah, that's the end of it. Alright, everybody. Leave a like and comment. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.